What's up? Welcome to the More Than a Minute podcast. I'm Isaac.
I'm Desiree.
And we got a story for you. There is something different about my wife since the last time we met. She's a bit older. She's a bit wiser. So we just celebrated my wife's 30th birthday.
Yay.
So we thank God that she's here, that she's alive, and that we get to celebrate another year with her.
I am so excited to be 30.
Yes.
I think I've been saying I've been really excited to turn 30 since I hit 25.
Yes.
So I'm super excited, and thank you so much for everybody who texted or called, or I can't say called. Nobody called me.
Nobody called you. Everybody texts now.
Everybody texts. Yeah. If you text me or you left me a comment on Facebook somewhere, I saw it. I can guarantee it. And thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
We have a story for you. For those of you that don't know, Desiree and I, we are Christians. We do believe in God. We do believe in Jesus. And we also believe that sometimes God set things up for us in order for his will to fall in place. The story that we're going to get into, it has a lot to do with us being inconvenienced, but it was for the convenience of somebody else. Earlier, I mentioned that sometimes God will use your upset as a set up. See what I did there?
I laughed harder earlier, I promise.
Back in 2016, I think it was 17. So about 6 or 7 years ago, my wife and I were campus leaders for New Life Covenant Church here in Casa Grande. So during that time, we decided to do a VBS. And if you've never been to a VBS, they're fun. So if you've never been to a VBS, what it stands for is Vacation Bible School. And what it is basically like a week long, or sometimes it's a few days of just like children church services for kids. And it's very exciting for kids, but it's also exciting for the adults. But they also consist of a lot of work. So we were there early. How long?
Well, so usually for Vacation Bible School, it takes a lot of preparation beforehand every day. So we have to coordinate, because VBS, we do like a church service for kids. There's worship just for kids. Usually we would have some kind of snack or like feed them dinner or something, depending on what time of the day.
We were doing dinner around that week. Yeah.
Yeah. That specific one, we did dinner because it was in the evening.
Yeah.
Just a few hours. And then like we do games, like there's all kinds of stuff that goes into, we decorated, did props and everything like that. And setting all that up takes time. So usually like way beforehand we're prepping, and then we do crafts. So then beforehand we're prepping crafts.
You got to prep that.
Yeah. So it's tons of like work that goes into before anything even starts. And usually we would be there like hours before to get things ready. Like you prep things in preparation of that week, and then every day, then you're setting up every day what you need to set up to get ready.
Right.
And so we would be there. I think at that time I was getting off of work at like 4:30.
Oh yeah. So we're both working at the time, and get off work and get straight to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Head straight over there.
So there's lots to prepare beforehand, but then also when we're done, there was a lot that we had to do. Besides locking up, we also had to clean up and make it look presentable, I guess, for the next day. During that time, there was a few people that we had to pick up. So on top of having to prepare all that, we also had to pick people up and drop them off after service. So I remember this particular day, it was towards the end. It was toward the end of the VBS, if I'm not mistaken, right? So we were already kind of like a little tired. It was exciting, but you do get tired.
After the days, you feel it. Like after so many days of doing all the work, you start to feel it a little bit.
I remember this day, I think I was super hungry. Like I couldn't wait to just get home and just relax. Stuff kept coming up, and we ended up being at the church later, like way later than anticipated. So we had that night, we had to give a couple people a ride home, right?
I think it was a few, yeah.
A few rides home.
They were preteens,
and so
they didn't drive.
So we had to get them home at a certain time, but then there were still things that we had to gather and take home that night as well. I forgot what happened exactly to cause it, but we ended up having to give a couple people rides home and then go back to the church.
I think it's just like you said, like there was certain things that we knew we had. So getting ready to go the next day, obviously we didn't want to come in the next day and have stuff to do from the night before and then have to do stuff for that day. So we were trying to get everything, like you said, throughout that day. I remember there was just different things that happened, little things, but they all added up. And then we ended up having to be there late, and we had, like I said, they're preteens.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, we got to get these kids home, and then we can come back and finish doing whatever we need to do.
Keep in mind, it's already late at night. Like, it's dark outside. It's probably like 10 o'clock at night. I can't remember, but I remember it being late. And by that moment, I was like, man, we got to go to work in the morning. We got to hurry up and get this done. So then the pressures just started coming in a little bit because, you know, then my daughter was like 4 or 5 at the time. So it's like, okay, we got to get her home and get her in bed. So our night was about to come to an end, and I believe we were going to grab something to eat and then just go home and relax for the rest of the night. Desiree goes to the car and she's loading the rest of the stuff. And at that point, I'm locking the building up. So I'm locking the door, and the next thing you know, my wife and I, we start hearing screaming.
Yeah, and like Isaac said, it was dark. It was late. Couldn't see anything in that area of town. There's street lights, but they're not very bright, especially at that time. We both heard screaming. Super loud screaming. Like, I mean, I don't know if you knew right off the back that it was a kid, but I didn't. We just heard screaming that was really loud. And so I'm waiting for Isaac to lock the door, and he comes, and I was kind of like, do you hear that? Do you hear? Because I was like, I hear screaming. And he was like, yeah, I know. And so we kind of waited, and it sounded really far away, but it was loud. So the more we waited, the closer it got. After a while, like looking down maybe 2 blocks away, I don't know if she had lights on her scooter, or because she was riding a scooter, or her shoes. But like 2 blocks down the road, you start seeing these little lights, and we were kind of like, what is that? And so we were standing there waiting. It was a little girl, probably like 4 or 5.
I think
she was young. She was younger than Jada.
Yeah. She wasn't in school yet, though, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So, because we were talking to her while we were there with her. But yeah, she's coming on her scooter. She gets a little closer, and we can kind of see her. So we knew it was a kid.
Yeah.
And Isaac was already by the road. Isaac was by the road in front of our car. I was behind the car because we had Jada. So I had Jada in the car, and I was kind of standing there. And I don't know if you want to say from there, because you were over there by the road.
And so I was trying to talk to her and call her over, like, hey, do you need help? Because I look up and there's no adults around. There's nobody else around. She's just running down the street with her scooter by herself. And so then at that point, I realized, because I'm a man in stranger danger, that she didn't trust me. And so I called my wife over.
Yeah. And at that point I was already walking over, because I mean, obviously it's a little girl. And I remember the biggest thing for me was getting her to stop, because this little girl was flying on her. She was crying.
She was scared.
But she was flying on her scooter like... Oh my gosh, she was going. I just remember she was going really fast, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, we have. I saw how she responded to Isaac, because you could tell she was kind of like, I don't know about you. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me was like, okay, we have to get her to stop, because if she keeps going as fast as she's going, who knows where she's going to end up. So I went over there, and I was kind of like, hey, and I remember, like, it's funny now thinking about it, because I was trying to talk to her, and she would like scoot, but she was moving really fast. So she'd like scoot really fast, and I'm like, hey, it's okay. And I was asking her, like, are you okay? Like, are you lost? We were talking to her, and I kept telling her, like, it's okay. You're okay. My name is Desiree. And I told her, this is Isaac. He's my husband. I told her we have our daughter, Jada.
We told them, like, hey, we're just getting out of church right now.
Yeah, I told her, I was like, our daughter Jada's over here. Do you want to come meet her? And so I was trying to get her to stop, and to make sure she knew she was okay and we weren't going to hurt her. So I kept telling her, like, it's okay. Like, I would kind of reassure her in between my questions, because then I'm trying to figure out, okay, where is this kid coming from? Asked her if she was lost. Turned out she was lost. And then she's just started telling us that she was walking with her mom, and she lost her mom.
We don't know how that happened. She went out for a night walk with her mom, and she was riding her scooter, and I don't know what happened, but the kid ended up taking the wrong direction, and she ended up on the wrong street. And she's about 4 or 5 years old, and so I think out of panic she just started racing down the street, but she didn't know where she was going.
Yeah, like I said, my biggest thing was making sure that she knew that we were safe to be with, because I felt like if I couldn't convince her that we were safe to be with, she wouldn't come with us. But I also didn't want to be like, here, get in my car, because stranger danger.
Right. Stranger danger. And so even at that point, we were kind of like, what do we do?
Yeah, we were very hesitant, because like I said, we didn't want her to take off, because then I feel like if she would have taken off and we would have followed her, that probably would have scared her more, because she was scared. So I remember like I said, I brought up Jada, and I had Jada get out of the car, kind of poke her head out, and I was telling her, like, oh, look, this is our daughter. This is how old she is. Then I was telling her, like I said, in between all that, I'm asking her questions. And so I had asked her, like, do you know where you live? And thankfully she knew the street that she lived on, because she was able to tell us right away.
Yeah. So instead of like calling the cops, she told us the street that she lived on. It's a small street. Like if I say this, the street,
If
most
you live
of y'all
in
would.
Casa Grande,
If you
you would
live
know
in
where it
Casa
is.
Grande, you know where it's at.
Well, so after we figured out where she lived, kind of the area where she lived, like I said, she had her scooter. So I told her like, hey, do you want to bring your scooter over here? And like, our trunk was open because we had just put stuff in it because we had stuff we needed to take home. So I brought her. I didn't take her too close to the car. I kind of kept her at a distance because I don't want her to feel like just
like
gonna
to freak out.
push
Yeah.
her in there or anything like that. So I brought her around to the trunk and I had showed her, look, this is our trunk. And I told her, we can help you find your house. We can help you find your mom. Is it okay if we put your scooter in the trunk? And I remember even then she was kind of like, I don't know. And I was telling her, you're going to be okay. Can we put your scooter in the trunk? Because then we can go try to find your mom. After a while, she was like, okay. And so I told her, go ahead and put your scooter in the trunk. So I let her put it in there. And then I put her in the car with us.
I remember even being nervous, like, man, we have a whole kid in our car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want people to think that we're kidnapping her. But she legit just lived a couple streets down. Like, she didn't live that far from where the church was at.
Like from where we started to see her little lights, from there, she lived like right there. So she literally just like kept going so far the wrong way and ended up crossing the street.
And we're glad that we got her because we didn't want like with the thought of having like somebody else possibly get into her before we did. It's almost as if the Lord placed us there at that time. So we found her street and then she was able to identify and recognize the house that she lived at. When we pulled up, her mom was already outside. She already called 911 and I guess they're already looking for her. And so when we pulled up, she was very relieved that we had her. She did question like, hey, what did we find her? Like what happened? Yada, yada, yada. You know, just like any other parent would, right? So we told her and then she was so thankful and she wanted us to go inside and then talk to her husband so she could thank us or talk to us. What was it?
I don't remember.
She wanted us to go inside.
She wanted us to go inside and talk to her husband.
And then we were like, nah, like we're
hungry.
We're just ready to go home. Like, okay, I just know that she's safe. I'm good with that. You don't got to thank me. Thank the good Lord. And then the cops pulled up and we just took off.
Yeah.
So looking back, we could see how the Lord was setting up our day. Like all the inconveniences that happened that day were set up to help somebody else. So what we thought was inconvenience was actually convenience for that child. Because looking back, we don't know what could have happened to that kid had they kept going. Like she was going the opposite direction of her house. And so sometimes we want to fight those frustrations. We want to fight those inconveniences, but sometimes those inconveniences are there for a purpose.
I mean, I agree. I didn't even think about it until now, but just recently we were late somewhere that we needed to be at a certain time. We were a few minutes late and happened to run into somebody that asked me to pray for them. And I remember that morning was just like, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get out the door on time. And I mean, there's multiple times that's happened. I feel like there's such a beauty in being able to just kind of roll with the punches, because even if we don't feel like it when we're doing the things we need to do, like the way that I am, I have a schedule set in my head. And when things aren't happening at the times that I feel like they need to, then I start to get frustrated. And sometimes I think everybody's like that a little bit, depending on what it is that we're doing. There's very many opportunities that come from just being able to embrace them when they present themselves, because it's not expected. Like I said, we have our schedules and sometimes we're busy and we're not really thinking of how we can pour into other people until it presents itself and it's right in your face. So there was a thing going around for a while. I don't think it was MySpace days. I'm pretty sure it was Facebook. So it might've been like a status people were sharing where it kind of gives an example of somebody who's having like a really bad morning, getting ready for work, and they're going to work and all these things are happening that are keeping them from being on time. And when they're frustrated about being on time, then come to find out there was like a car accident or something. And if they had been on time, they would have been there. You know what I mean? And I feel like that sometimes that's a real thing too.
And I feel like sometimes we just get so like caught up in our flesh and so carnal that we're not listening to the voice of God, and God just allows things happen in the physical world to get us on track and to get us to align what is purpose.
And I remember so like talking about just recently when I had seen somebody that asked me to pray for them. I remember fighting being frustrated because I was like, how come no matter how early, like, and this has been a thing lately. I'm working on it because we have a new schedule lately because Jada's starting soccer. So she has multiple practices a week. She has a game every weekend. So along with work, and then also with church, there's some things I've gotten involved in at church that are also something else added to my schedule. So they're all at once. There's like all these new things that I'm having to try to work in our schedule. Also like stuff with you, trying to navigate that. Sometimes it throws me off a little bit. Like, okay, I have a schedule. Now all this new is here. And then I have to try to readjust and figure out that new schedule, all of the new things, which is good because these are good things. But just trying to adjust. And lately, like I said, I'm working on it, but I've been in this thing where like no matter what I try to do, it's kind of trial and error. I think, okay, I need to get ready at this time, be out the door at this time to get to this place at this time. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. Yeah. Like sometimes even though I'm trying to shoot for those times, somehow I still end up being late a little bit, just a little bit. But I don't, because I've been married to Isaac for so long now, I don't like to be late. There was a time I didn't really care. It didn't bother me. But now trying to navigate that, there's been a lot of times where I've been a little bit late. And so then I have to, the next time I'm like, okay, I need to try for earlier because if I try earlier, then we'll be on time. So I'm trying to navigate all these things. And like I said, that at that moment, I was trying not to be frustrated because I was running late, but happened to run into somebody that needed prayer. And I mean, thankfully I was there because if I had been on time, I wouldn't have met them where I had met them at. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I was trying to say.
Please like, thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.